everyone. My name is Maria Muti, and I am a commissioner in the Wakefield Human Rights Commission. On behalf of the Human Rights Commission, I welcome you all to this panel discussion in recognition of International Women's Day, which is celebrated on March 8th. We also recognize Paul Donaco, Chair of the Board of Selectmen, Maureen Butt, also on the Board of Selectmen, Steve Mayo, Town Administrator, Superintendent Dr. Kim Smith, Deputy Chief Craig Calabresi, Representative for State Representative Paul Broder, and the Galvin Middle School's Wake Up Youth Action Team. We thank you all for being here tonight, and we are excited to hear from our panelists, 6 women who impact our community in a variety of inspiring ways. Before we start, however, we have the pleasure of welcoming Wakefield High School's all-female a cappella group, She Major, here to perform for us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, She Major.
Hello, everyone. First off, I want to say thank you for having us here because this is an awesome experience. And our first song, we're going to sing one song now and one at the end. Right now, we're going to sing If I Ain't Got You by Alicia Keys, and our soloist is Jill Casa. Thanks.
Some people live for the fortune. Some people live just for the fame. Some people live for the power, yeah. Some people live just to play the game. Some people think that the physical things define what's within, and I've been there before. That life's a bore so full of the superficial. Some people want it all, but I don't want nothing at all. If it ain't you, baby, if I ain't got you, baby. Some people want diamond rings, some just want everything, but everything means nothing if I ain't got you, yeah. Some people search for a fountain. The promise is forever young. Some people need 3 dozen roses, and that's the only way to prove you love him. Hand me the world on a silver platter, and what good would it be with no one to share, no one who truly cares for
Thank you, She Major. And now Commissioner Pina Masciarelli would like to say a few words in honor of Dr. Kimberly Smith, who is retiring at the end of this school year.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here on this very exciting night. It is the season of awards and recognition, and this evening, the Wakefield Human Rights Commission would like to take a few moments to recognize a member of our community who will be retiring later this school year. Superintendent Kim Smith sat on this very stage with us at our first panel last year at International Women's Night. Her presence, honesty, and genuineness as a role model had our commission believe that this would be the event for us to recognize her. So, Dr. Smith. It's my second time I get to see her today. So our certificate to you reads that this certificate of recognition is awarded to Superintendent Dr. Kim Smith for her passion, dedication, leadership, and enthusiasm to the cause of civil and human rights for all students in Wakefield. And there's a quote on here that we thought just was all about you. If your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader. Thank you very much. And this is for you too. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you, Pina and Dr. Smith. And now, without further ado, I'd like to ask you all to give a warm welcome to tonight's panelists. District Attorney Marion Ryan, Bobby Gibb, Lauren Donati, Dr. Astrid Cruz, Mimi LeMay, and Karen Burke. While they're getting seated, I'd just like to invite you. Each of these women has a unique and rich life history that has brought them here today, and I welcome you to explore their biographies in the program. And to our panel, I'd like to thank you all for being here, and I'd like to start with a question to all of you. Just want to make sure, does everyone have a microphone? Go. Oh, okay, maybe we, oh. We'll do one more. And I'd like to start with the opening question of, what are your strengths and how do you bring them to your respective fields? Whoever wants to start.
All right, I'll start.
Okay.
So in thinking about this question, so I'm an advocate and an author, and I'm advocating for transgender youth and gender non-binary youth. I do this locally at the State House, lobbying, local education in schools and in businesses, then also nationally through media on the television and stuff like that. And so in order to be an effective advocate, I have to be a good communicator. But rather, I don't think that I always hit the nail on the head with communication. But when I'm the most effective, it's not because of the words I chose, it's because of my willingness to be vulnerable in front of people and to share an experience that they can find something in their life that they can relate to what I'm going through, whether it's as a mother or as somebody who belongs to the Jewish faith or as somebody with a child who has a special need of some sort. And so willing to be vulnerable and to use my empathy toward my own experience, to be able to express that has been my strength as an advocate and something I try to hone.
All right, I'll go next before I get more nervous. I think that my strength is compassion, and I think about each patient that I see, they're little non-human animals with their own needs and thoughts. And then the compassion extends to the client who brings in their fur kid, their pet. Kind of everyone has different feelings about their animals, and really trying to all work together and think about what each person needs. So, I know the pet probably just wants me to leave them alone or please keep just feeding me treats and don't poke me with anything. But, I want to help them live a healthy, happy life. I want to make sure that they don't get some silly communicable disease I can prevent with a vaccine. And then for the human that's in the room, sometimes as a veterinarian, there's an awkward triangle. There's me, there's my patient, there's a client. So my patient and client are not the same entity. And really understanding the family that comes with that patient. What does that family need? What does the pet mean to them? What do they want me to do to help them? And also just to have a good relationship as a family, because it really is like being a family practitioner. I'm like a pediatrician, general practitioner, family practitioner, really trying to get everyone on the same page, working together. And also just being compassionate to some of the realities, like people don't have health insurance. They can't necessarily spend whatever money it is to help that pet. So, I just want to help the pet. The pet wants me to leave him alone and feed him cheese. And the owners just want to get out of there with like, your pet's fine. So just trying to all be on the same page and help.
As a young baker in the community, I feel that I'm really connected to the baking community as a whole across the country. I participate in a lot of baking events and bread conferences that nobody knows exist in the middle of the woods. But really, it keeps me connected to the young people and the older people in the industry who have paved the way for us and are making way for the new kids to come in. And just last week, I was at a bread event where throughout the whole event, my time was spent talking to the little interns that are still students to see who can we get as a great baker? Who can we take from this school, pull right out before they even get into any other industry and teach them our trade, teach them artisan breads and something that, maybe a handful of people in this general area even know how to do. And teaching kids courses, like we just taught our first kids course this past January, and it inspired me to see like kids that were 8 to 12 come in, and baking is what they do. Like, this is it. They don't play sports. Like, they're bakers from the beginning. And to have like somewhere they could go and take a baking class, like I feel like I maybe had that, but it wasn't made aware to me. And to be able to give them a different venue to express themselves away from sports and drama and other activities that have always been available was truly inspiring to me. And I think is a way to just harbor the youth bakers and take them and give them all the resources they need to become awesome bakers like we are.
Hello?
What was the question? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Just what were your
Strength. We'll do
Oh.
strength.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank what this is for.
David Watts. I wanted to thank David Watts for inviting me and for the town of Wakefield for having a Human Rights Commission. And I think every town and every city should have one, not only in the United States, but all over the world. I'm so inspired by this. I'm going to go back to Rockport and Gloucester and see if they have one, and if not, what we can do about getting one there. Because I really think this is the way to save the world, is to spread democracy and to have this worldwide local human rights. So that's what democracy is all about, individual human rights. So anyway, thanks. Well, I have several fields. One is I do research on neurodegenerative diseases, and in fact, I work with the Angel Fund, which is here in Wakefield, and I do research for a lab that's in the University of Massachusetts, particularly on ALS, but I'm also interested in other neurodegenerative diseases, so I work on that. I also am an artist, and I do sculpture, and I'm working on a life-size sculpture that's going to be put along the marathon route, and they're trying to raise money for that. And I've already got it done, actually. It's in my bedroom. And but they're trying to raise the money to get it cast in bronze. So that, and then I practiced law for 18 years, and I liked that. I like being able to help people. I really like helping people. I want to help the world somehow be better. I've always wanted to do that. I always want to help the world be better and healthier, and individuals and societies and so forth. And I guess that's why I ran. I mean, and I was the first woman to ever run the Boston Marathon, and 3-time woman winner in the pre-sanctioned era. Before they had a women's division there, because they didn't think women could run. So they didn't think a woman could run 26 miles. So and in those days, a lot of things were close to women. So thanks to a lot of women, and these women here, remarkable young women, are doing things that we never could do in 50 years ago, 60 years ago when I was growing up. So anyway, I guess that's about it.
Hi, thanks for having me. Hold it back. I guess one of my strengths is that I love my job. In the Air Force, I was a nurse, and I loved my time in the Air Force and being a nurse and taking care of the veterans and the people actively serving in the military. And it was time to move on for my family. And this job has given me the opportunity to still take care of those veterans in a bit of a different way, a little bit more of helping connect people to services or get people the help they need, or just be somebody that they can sit and talk to. So that is, I just care about them so much, and it really is a way for me to continue to serve now that I'm not on active duty. So I think that just my love of my job and my veterans that I serve here in Wakefield, Melrose, and Saugus really just makes it not like work at all. I love going to work.
So I think probably the biggest strength that I bring to my job is the reason I went to law school. I went to law school because when I was in college, I worked at Greater Boston Legal Services. And I saw that people who were our clients were usually people who were in, fairly desperate situations. And that the people who had lawyers got different results than the people who didn't. And it seemed clear to me that being able to advocate for somebody was a way to get from one place to the other. And that's why I went to law school. And then I became a prosecutor. And when you work as a prosecutor where there's never enough money and there's never enough of so many things that you need, you have to develop that ability to see where you're going to go, and then you just figure out how to get there. So it really is that sense of, I always take no as kind of a suggestion. And now we're going to figure out how to get there. And I just think that's something that really, it has allowed us in our office to do lots of things that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to do. And also in your own life, there are very few, probably 3 things in life that can never be changed. And otherwise, there's always a way to get to a different result. And I think sometimes we forget that, and we find ourselves stuck in a place where we don't have to be.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask each of you maybe some individual questions that are tailored to your own experiences. And we'll start with Bobby Gibb, if that's all right. Can you tell us what are your best and worst memories of your first marathon run?
Well, I think there was a series of best and worst, because I had written for my application, and I received a letter back that said, women are not physiologically able to run marathons, and we can't take the medical liability. And the Boston Marathon was then a men's division race only. And so, of course, as a woman, I wasn't qualified to run that. But I saw that, and I said, I think they have something to learn. I had trained for 2 years for this, and I was at the time running 40 miles at a stretch. And I get this thing, women are not able to run more than 1.5 miles. And I go, this is a false belief. I've had this war against false beliefs for my whole life, and false beliefs do so much damage to people and to society. And here was one, and I said, wow, I suddenly saw I had a chance to change things, because in those days women weren't allowed to do most things. You were expected to get married, and that was about it. And which is nice. I mean, I like being married and having kids and all, but there's so much more too. So the best thing was, I came back on a Greyhound bus, and I got there the day. Well, the worst thing was, my parents thought I was absolutely nuts. My father thought I'd gone round the bend, and he stormed out of the house and forbid me to run the marathon. And that was followed by the best thing that ever happened was I convinced my mom to drive me to the start. And she had always been trying to quell my love for running and my independent spirit and everything, thinking for my own good, if I was ever going to catch a husband if I'm running in the woods with the dogs. And so the best thing that happened was she drove me to the start of the marathon, and then we hugged for the first time in years. And finally, she was on my side. And I said, this is going to help to set women free. And somehow it got through to her because she was a beautiful, intelligent woman who had been sort of subjugated in this household situation. My father, he was a good guy. It was just, that was what they did in this society in those days. And so that was the best thing. And then I got to Hopkinton, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to get in the race because I figured if they saw me, a woman, they'd throw me out or maybe I'd get arrested. So that was the worst thing I'm trying to figure out. So I disguised myself with a hooded sweatshirt, and I hid in the bushes, and then when the gun went off, I jumped in the middle of the pack. And I figured if I can show this misconception about women wrong, it'll put into question all the other misconceptions about women that have been holding women down for the past how many centuries. And so I jumped in, and there's the best thing that happened was the men quickly, well, I'm not sure this was so good, but studying my anatomy from here, they very quickly realized that I was a girl. And but the best thing was that they were friendly. And I said, I'm afraid if they see I'm a girl, they'll throw me out. And we won't let them throw you out. It's a free road. And so that was the best thing. The men were supportive and friendly. And then the next best thing was the people along the way started clapping and hollering. And the next best thing was the police didn't arrest me. And I ran all the way, and I got to Wellesley, and that was a great time, and the Screech Tunnel, and the women were all yelling and jumping up and down, and there was one woman going, Ave Maria, Ave Maria, and that was a real high, because at that moment, it felt like everybody realized, we all realized for the first time that things were never going to be the same. This is really going to change things. And then I ran all the way into Boston, and the worst thing was I had horrible blisters on my feet, and my pace dropped way off, and I was just tiptoeing along, but I finally got to the end, and 3 hours and 21 minutes, and I was actually in the top third. I finished ahead of 2/3 of the pack, and then the governor of Massachusetts came down and shook my hand, and that was a really good thing. And then I tried to go to the post-marathon stew with the other runners, who were now my friends, and they said, sorry, no women allowed. So that's sort of it.
Thank you very much. I'd like to talk to Dr. Cruz. As a woman in the sciences, we hear a lot about how girls lose interest in the STEM fields. What motivated you to go into a career in science, and how do you think we can encourage more girls to pursue a career in science?
Well, for me, I've always thought it was the most amazing thing to figure out how living things work. And I'm the person that can't use a toaster, so living things are my thing, mechanical things are not my thing. So STEM, I'm going to really stick to the biology part of it. But how cool each of us has all these little cells in them, and they work together, and they talk together, and they make us conscious and thinking. So I've always thought that was just so fascinating. I loved biology. I hated physics, sadly. And I just loved putting everything together. And I think I'm a veterinarian because I think it's really cool to figure out how things work. And I have compassion and want to help things. So it's kind of the perfect mix of biology and that urge to make the world a better place, kind of one for a kid at a time, one family at a time. And for me, I kind of took a meandering path to become a veterinarian. My mother pushed me very hard when I was growing up that I should be a veterinarian, and I said no, because that's what preteens and teenagers sometimes do. And then also had read all the James Herriot books, where he spends a lot of time with his arm up a cow in very cold places. And in vet school I did that too, but that was because I realized it's actually warmer inside a cow than it is outside a cow. So I just, growing up though, that's really not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and sheep muck and like all that stuff. So, and then after I graduated from college, I was a teacher for 2 years, and my joke is now, that's why I'm a veterinarian now. And I love teaching biology and just the sciences to kids, but it's very hard it's like I'm not good with rowdy puppies because they just don't listen to me. So rowdy high school kids, I want to impart how exciting I think biology is, and they might not agree, so that's really kind of tough. Then I started a PhD program, and then I realized after a few months in a lab that I didn't really care how different cuckoo species were related to spend the rest of my life pipetting stuff. And then I talked to my husband, and I said, I should have kids. I should go to business school and go into human resources. And then my mother said, you should be a veterinarian. And thankfully, in my mid-20s, I actually listened to her, and I spent a day at a vet clinic, kind of tromped in like, fine, Mom, I'm going. And within an hour, I said, this is my calling. This is the coolest stuff ever, to be able to help. And I saw crazy, gory stuff that I never thought I'd be able to handle, but I realized that I was helping make things better, one organism at a time. And I've never looked back, so.
Lauren, you opened your business almost 2 years ago, is that correct? Yep. What are some of your observations that you've made on your journey so far?
So I wrote some notes because I can't remember anything, and I haven't slept in a while. It's been a crazy journey for us over the past 2 years, and we've had our ups and downs like most businesses do. But this community and the industry, as I just talked about, have taught me a lot that it's more than just about the bread shop. We're here to inspire the young generation of bakers. We're here to watch Wakefield grow as we grow with it, and do what we can for the community who has had our back since day one. But most of all, we're here to grow and start a life for ourselves and learn through business how to be strong females, stick up for ourselves, and do what we believe in. There are a few things that I believe are integral to our success and that are not engraved in everyone. We're a bakery of 3 employees, 2 of which are owners. The days get long and the weeks get longer, but we're doing what we love, and we don't have to answer to anyone. We've made a lot of sacrifices, and we do on a daily basis, like missing family events and traveling and spending time with friends and doing all the other things that 20-somethings do. But we wouldn't change it any other way. And I played a high level of competitive soccer for most of my life, since I could walk, thanks to my dad. From the time I was about 10 years old, I was practicing and playing every single day at the club level, competing with the best kids in the state. It was all I did, it was all I thought about. And I got recruited, I played college soccer, and as a sophomore in college, my life changed. The doctor said, that's one too many concussions, and it's not gonna happen again. So that was it, like never stepping on the field again from that day. It changed my life. My world was ending, it was all I knew. And they told me to sit in a dark room and basically do nothing until I felt better. I was depressed and I didn't know what to do next. As I look back, this life-changing moment, I felt grateful. Through my athletic career, I learned discipline, responsibility, focus, and grit, the tools necessary for my current success as a baker and female business owner. So to all the young people here today, I challenge you to commit yourself to something. Know what you want and go get it. Don't let anyone or anything stand in your way, and fight for what you believe in. Never look back, unless it's at all the people that said you couldn't do it. As far as the community and how they can support local business, I always say to everyone, just put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Before you go to a big box store, think, how could buying that loaf of bread or buying local flowers change someone? That could be paying their rent. That could be sending their kid to college. So just think and respect and appreciate the work that your local community is doing for you and the business owners that do everything on a daily to support you, because without them, there'd be no downtown Main Street. We just have Targets and CVS's, and who really wants to do that? It's no fun anymore. But thank you.
Mimi, can you tell me how society's impressions of gender either help or hinder children who are transgender?
So one of the interesting things that I've discovered over the years, being the proud mom of not only a transgender son, but on either end, having 2 cisgender daughters. So we have 3 kids in all, an older daughter, my transgender son, and then a younger cisgender, that means not transgender, daughter on the lower end. What I've discovered is that some of the ways that society sees and values and thinks about gender are harmful for my transgender son in similar ways that they are harmful to my cisgender daughters. Because when you have 2 buckets, and one is male and one is female, and we're constantly pushing kids into one, whether it's because of expression, that's like the way the clothes they wear, the way they walk, the way they talk, their interests, well, everybody gets hurt. And especially the way that cisgender girls are viewed for their physical qualities. Well, my transgender son is viewed by some as less because his body doesn't match people's perception of what it should look like. Where his mind is male, and he knows he's male, and he's said he's male from the age of 2.5, and he is happy and content and thriving as a male. But there are people who will look at his body and say, that can't be so. I don't like that can't be so, because as a girl, I've heard it too many times in my life too. I grew up in a very ultra-Orthodox Jewish community where I learned a lot of things that I value to this day. I have a love of texts and learning and the holidays. But one thing that really hurt me growing up was the bucket that I needed to be in. What I would do, what I would wear, what I would dress, who I would be, what kind of job I would have or not be allowed to have, and who I would marry. All of that was determined from the time I was born. I think when we let our children be who they are, whether it's the way they express themselves or what their identity is, and we stop trying to force them into categories that really don't fit anyone, when you think about it, we will see stronger, more confident people who have more to give to their societies and communities. And I think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing the breakdown of some gender norms. That's not a scary thing. It's scary to some people, but it shouldn't be scary because we all have a unique self on every measure. We're all on some spectrum in the way we dress or talk. I happened to always love martial arts when I was younger. I never got a chance to do it until I was older, but that was breaking a gender norm. My husband loves to cook. That broke a gender norm. I think the less we worry about whether something is a girl or a boy thing, the better everyone is, whether you're transgender or cisgender. So I'm hoping that we continue in that way in the schools and in our communities.
Thank you. D.A. Ryan, you mentor women lawyers and law students. What piece of advice do you find yourself giving the most often and why? I'm sorry, I can ask again. What piece of advice do you give when you mentor law students and female lawyers? What piece of advice do you give the most often and why?
There's a few that I use all the time. One is that it is never as serious as you think it is, and that everything passes. Whether you've done something and it's wonderful and you think that makes you at a different level of accomplishment, and then you hit a bump in the road and you can't imagine how that could have been. Or you go, for our students, for our law students or our young DAs, you go in and you stand up and you literally can't think of your name when the judge asks you who you are. And, it really is true that no one's ever thinking about you as much as you are. And you are certain that everybody in the room is going to remember that for the rest of their life. And, sometimes folks come to me and I can't be a lawyer, my career is over because whatever happened. And, as I say frequently to people, there's somebody in the batter's box tomorrow who's going to do something that's going to move everybody's attention right off whatever happened to you. So I think that's a great gift to ourselves when you really can see when things happen in that perspective. Another piece of it is that it in part comes, I think, from that fear of not doing well. We have lots of folks who are reluctant to do things. And I think this is different in a sense for some of our younger women. People have such a need to be so over-prepared that they deprive themselves of opportunities. And which is not to say that being prepared isn't a great thing and you shouldn't show up to do something with no idea of what you're doing. But it's like life, you're never going to be perfectly prepared. And if you wait to be perfectly prepared, you will never do anything. And I think sometimes for younger women, we have taught them that, and I say this to my own 21-year-old daughter, we've taught them that the stakes might be so high. They think the stakes of everything are so high, they're not willing to do it if it's not going to be perfect. The stakes really aren't usually all that high. And and everybody knows this in here who's done things over their career, a lot of doing things is sometimes just looking like you know what you're doing and being willing to take that chance. And that's just an important part, I think, of doing well, of really, I always think that you want to get to the end of your life having taken every opportunity that was there and having done all of the things you wanted to do. And everybody has that fear and that caution, and some of which is very natural and some of which is good. But you don't want to get to the other end and have missed out on a whole lot of things because you were just afraid to take that step forward.
Thank you, DA Ryan. Karen, in a recent article, you described being a flight nurse as the highlight of your career. What drew you to that position, and what made it so rewarding to you?
When I was in high school, I knew that was the time I knew that I wanted to be a nurse. And embarrassingly, it was because of a TV show, China Beach, which was about the Vietnam War. I'm like, that is what I want to do. I want to be a nurse, and I want to take care of the people who serve our country. So then off to ROTC I went, college, and came into the Air Force and was in a hospital. So it was nice, but you kind of think, all right, I'm doing my thing, talking to veterans. It was awesome taking care of patients in the hospital. But I got the opportunity to, from there, go and do a flying assignment. And it was the highlight. There were many parts that I love, but that was why I had become a nurse, why I joined the military. 9/11 happened when I was at my flying assignment. And 2 weeks later, off we went to a forward location, and my job was to fly into different locations to pick up some of the people who had been injured in the war and take them to Germany or to Turkey for care. But it was the reality of, this is what I've always wanted to do, and to be given the honor of being able to take care of the people who flew to a foreign country and found themselves in harm's way. And just the connection that you can make with the people. All of my nursing career was amazing, but that was the highlight because you are in the back of an aircraft with guys and gals who are doing that mission, or who have lost everything with losing one of the people in their unit, and you're flying them together on a plane. There were just experiences that it's hard for me to share. But because I got to do that and take care of them, it's a connection that you'll have for the rest of your life, and you can bump into people that you haven't seen in 10 years, and it's like you never had time away. but just to be able to do that and take care of those people and the sacrifices that they've made to give them that piece of home and that comfort that they need was really what made it special for me.
Thank you, Karen. So I'd like to ask, before we open it up for a Q&A from the audience, I'd like to ask you all one more question. So on the topic of self-care is generally undervalued because it's seen as more of a luxury than a necessity for a healthy state of mind. Can you all tell us what you do to practice self-care?
Go first. I have 3 little human children and a lot of fur kids and scaly kids. So for me, I've realized early on in life that I'm one of those people who needs to go to bed really early and sleep a long time. So I was really not a lot of fun in college at all. So pretty much I don't watch TV and I just sit in bed and I read, and most of the time the light's out by 10 and I'm up at 7, and that's okay. And then I really try so hard to go to yoga class and to exercise and lift weights, whatever I can do at that point in time, at least a few times a week, to take care of my physical body, because otherwise I'm just going to fall apart. And I need to be strong enough to lift up my 3-year-old when he's yelling for me to do whatever it is he wants me to do now, right now. Mommy, now. So
my self-care looks a little bit the opposite of what your self-care looks like. And I like your self-care better. So now I can feel guilty about my self-care. Anyway, I tend to, so my husband goes to bed early. He's the CEO of a startup company, and he works really hard from like 6 a.m., 5 a.m. And so he goes to bed around 9 o'clock, and that's when I self-care, which means I sit in front of the TV with a glass of wine, and I watch some cheesy drama that I shouldn't be watching, only if I was a kid or a teenager, but I love them all. And I just watch 1 or 2 episodes, and I go online and I read articles. And then I kiss my dog goodnight. I have an adorable little pug. And then I go to bed. And that for me is the unwinding. Gym happens sometimes.
I think my biggest means of self-care is exercise. I love to go out and run when I have the time, or exercise. And when I don't have those opportunities, I too enjoy to watch, like watching some, not necessarily great TV at night, but enjoyable.
As many people know, I'm not great at self-care. I spend a lot of times awake at the bakery. But for me, it's about like finding free time to do something that I really love. And even though I'm not supposed to, I play soccer in a women's league. But I play with the older group so that I don't have to like play as hard, and I kind of alter it a little to work for myself, and everybody on the team knows that if the ball comes near my head, I'm definitely not heading it. But yeah, I try to just make free time, and when my time just runs up and I have to go to bed because it gets to that point, my support group, that's all over there, is always there to catch me. And like when I need to go to bed, I can call my mom or anybody, and they'll just come and open the bakery and make sure everything's gonna run so that I can take care of myself. So yeah, thank you guys.
I still run, and if I can't get out, I run inside on a trampoline. And I like to study and think and solve problems.
So I tried to think of a really good answer to this question. Something like I run, I grow organic vegetables, I do whatever. I really tried. And you know, like probably certainly every woman in this audience, I think I'm much better at making sure everybody else is taking care of themselves than I am at myself. But I really just love to shop. I don't need to buy anything. I don't need to buy anything. I like to just wander through the store. I like to touch things. I like to look at things. I'm perfectly content. It's so much cheaper than therapy. I can go to Marshall's for an hour and I am good. So, I'd like to get to a better self-care, but that really, it just kind of clears your head. And you buy things for other people, and then you feel good about how, charitable and generous you've been in buying things for other people. It just totally works for me.
Yes, and there are certainly no value judgments here. Whatever anyone's self-care is, that's what works for you, and that's been fantastic. So we'd like to open it up to any questions that any of the audience members have, and we have members of She Major that will go around with microphones and meet you where you are. I'm sorry? Oh, and if any kids have questions, we will give them priority.
They can't be hard questions, though. I think it's you.
So when you were running and your feet were hurting and it was really painful, what made you keep going?
Oh, in the race?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because if I'm just training, of course, I'd stop. But yeah, in the race, well, I felt this horrendous weight of responsibility because I was running to prove a point and to hopefully bring about a change. And if I failed, if I couldn't finish, I would end up disproving what I was trying to prove. So I had a huge sense of responsibility, and I would have finished that if I had to crawl. So that's kept me going. I had to finish.
What made you all inspired to be what inspired you to be a strong woman?
The question was, what made you all decide to be a strong woman? Is that right?
I've got one for this. I'm inspired by feeling responsible and empowered by the generations after me and to come. What kids are doing, and I am pretty much still a kid, but what the younger generation is doing is unbelievable. I mean, when I hear today about Wakefield Middle School having a feminist group be started, I was overjoyed, and just in the way that we're headed and thinking about how progressive a future we'll have with these kids who came out tonight. I couldn't imagine an event like this happening when I was their age, and just being inspired by the past dominant figures that I've had as a kid. And we have great people that are coming up now, but we have to remember that the past was great too. And for me, someone like Julia Childs, who paved the way and got females on television cooking and got us into the spotlight, there was the baking industry, as much as baking is still a girl thing, as people say, it's not. The baking industry is compiled of really old men, and to get into to get into something, it took some inspiration in watching someone on TV and seeing how they didn't care, they apologized to no one, and then having role models like my mom, who from the beginning was like, no, we're going to use the big oven. We're not going to use the easy bake oven. Let's go for it. And, if we're going to do this, we're going all in. We're not And she just inspired me to be who I am and grow up to be a strong female and never look back. And like Julia Child said, never apologize for your mistakes. So, yeah.
You asked me, how did you know what you wanted to be? Maya's my friends. And Jenna, so I will answer the question. These are future human rights commissioners. I'm just going to have you know. They are. So I was inspired because I have an amazing kid, and I wanted to make the world better for him. And I think that we can never underestimate the power that our children have in making us better than we are already, and making us stronger, and making us want things to be different for them. And I'm sure that you're a great inspiration to your mom in that way, and inspiration to other people as well. So definitely, I would say in my case, it was my kids who decided that I would be an advocate and an author.
I think for me, I've always felt like there was no reason that it doesn't matter that I'm a woman, I'm a human first, that's really all that mattered. And I was always wanting to do my best and be competitive in school. You know, I wanted to be valedictorian, so I just kept going. But it's interesting, since I have become a mother, it does bring out a totally different strength. So, you know, I go skiing on horrible snowy days with ice all over because I don't want the kids to say, well, mommy can't do this, mommy can't do that. So I go to the gym, I lift as hard as I can because I don't want the kids to say, well, mommy can't carry this and dad needs to do that. So I'm on my knees planting bulbs, and, you know, they get to see all parts of me, and I have to really try hard and never fake it, or fake it till I make it with them, because they're smart and they start to see stuff. So I just want to make sure that they see that mommy can do whatever she is set her mind on.
What made you open the bread shop?
Actually, I said I would never, ever, ever own a bakery. It was like, I helped someone do it when I was in high school, and it was just disastrous. It didn't work out. We spent hours and hours making cupcakes on cupcakes on cupcakes. And it was just something I said I will never, ever do. I will never put myself through that. I won't put my family through it, go into that kind of debt. And then I got into the industry. And I realized that, okay, I'm one of the top bakers in Boston, and I'm still making no money. So I'm gonna have to do something to be able to support a family and buy a house and do all the things that we wanna do in life. And thankfully, my parents are uberly supportive, and nobody was gonna give a loan to a 22-year-old. So yeah, I went to my dad, and I basically was like, we have to do this. We have got to do it. There's no artisan bakeries. I showed up with like a 12-page business plan, a layout of the building, like everything you could imagine. And then in order to get my space, which I think is the best story ever, I called the landlord, no realtor. I had no idea what was going on, didn't know you needed a realtor. So I just called the landlord, and I'm like, hey, I want to open this bakery. Like, can I rent your space? And he's like, so how much experience do you have? And I was like, none. And he's like, so do you have a business degree? And I'm like, I'm working on it. And he's like, do you have any money? And I'm like, my parents are gonna give me some. And I didn't know, I was just trying to keep this guy on the phone, and he was like, okay, it's not gonna work out. And I did the like, no. And I kept him on the phone, and I probably talked to him for an hour after that. And literally within a month, I rented the space and we started building out. And it kind of, all the pieces just fell in place. I never thought I would be here, but I wouldn't change it for anything, so.
Was any of you a Girl?
Oh. Was anybody a Girl Scout?
I was a Girl Scout.
Were you afraid to join the army?
And I was very excited to join, and I'm very happy that I did. It's the best decision I ever made.
What were you referring to when you said cisgender?
Oh.
Yes.
as the same, the same gender. So the means that your gender in your mind, your identity, is the same as your sex assigned at birth, right? So I'm cisgender, which means doctor looked between my legs and said, you have a girl. And I feel like a girl, right? In whatever way that I do. Transgender is cross, it's the opposite. And so you feel the opposite as the sex assigned at birth. Thank you. You're welcome.
I just wanted to ask what year it was that you ran the first marathon, your first marathon?
The first marathon I ran in 1966, and then I ran again 67 and 68.
I have a question for Marion. In your many years excuse me, of walking through stores and touching the merchandise and buying nothing, have you had a number of experiences with store security?
No, I steer far clear of that. I am the ultimate rule follower. That's why I'm a prosecutor. So I haven't.
So as far as I can tell, none of you has spent any time in jail, right? Okay. So for all of those people who have said, no, you can't do it, you did not punch them or assault them, so you're not in jail, you've made it through. What is your secret for dealing with those naysayers?
You just don't listen. I really believe it's sort of the same thing that is the underlay of having good manners. You know, you do what you want to do, and other people, you can't control their behavior. So people say things, you know, it's the same way when somebody says something that hurts your feelings, or they tell you, you know, they don't like the way you cut your hair or how you dress or whatever. At some level, that's their opinion, and they are one of, you know, as we say in Middlesex County, one of 1.6 million people. They're entitled to that, and you just move on. You know, people take, there should be really a handful, maybe a little bit more, of people in the world whose opinion you really care about. And, you know, so someone thinks you can't do something, that's fine. They're entitled to that opinion. But if you have a plan in your mind, that's why I think it's so important to be able to figure out what it is you're going to do and just point yourself in that direction. And then you know, the other stuff just kind of falls away as you're on your way to where you're going. It's the same, I would assume, as you start out in Hopkinton and you head to Boston. You don't stop to chat with everybody along the way who says maybe you can't do that. You know, it very much is you got to go where you're going.
When I sit here and listen to you, it seems like it's really bravery that you all have. And I think Lauren mentioned, you know, other people in your lives, but like, who or what made you brave or gave you the confidence to be able to do these amazing things?
I guess anybody.
I just followed what I love. I was just so in love with things. I just followed it. You know, love casts out fear, and you just go for what you love.
For me, it was my parents. My parents really taught us you could be anything that you wanted. And I think as a parent myself, you know, not that I don't pick at my kids about this or that or whatever, the most important thing you can teach your kids every day is how incredibly valuable they are and how capable they are. Because, you know, for the most part, those are not the kids that we see in the criminal justice system, no matter what their other circumstances are. And really, you hope it's parents, but the kids who have at least one adult in their life who tells them all the time how valuable they are, and that whatever far-fetched sounding thing they want to do, they can do. That is what gets you through life. It's what gets you through so many things, and it's what propels you to where you want to go.
So, can I ask 2 questions? No? Yes? Okay, so my first thing is that sometimes I feel that society at this point makes girls feel bad for maybe acting girly. But I feel, I don't know, like, I don't know how to explain it, but sometimes I feel bad for liking more feminine things because I feel like I should be acting like what everyone else said. I should be more advocate. I should be stronger. But sometimes I'm just not stronger.
I think that you're kind of suffering from a kind of reversal maybe of the same kind of discrimination that somebody who was supposedly liking more masculine things might have experienced a few years ago. And that's not right either, because we all exist on a spectrum of the kind of things that we like or the kind of things that we want to do, and we have one life to live. And that's actually my password for some of my stuff online. I'm not going to tell you how I spell it. I spell it differently. But that's one life to live. That's it. One shot. To be you, to be authentic every day. And don't let anyone take that away from you. And there are some things that I love to do that are so girly girl, and I have no apologies. And don't you ever apologize for it. Just be you.
I just told a whole room full of people that shopping is my favorite thing. So really.
You know what?
Really?
We should exchange notes, because it's actually one of my favorite things too.
Yeah. You know, what do you care? I mean, really, at the end of the day, these people who think things, what are they doing for you? And what do you care about what they think? We spend way too much of our lives thinking about what everybody else thinks. And they're not giving you 15 minutes of thought. So, you know, you should do what, you know, there's just, and I think that's a very hard piece as parents too. I think we have all these ideas, and I think kids, to some extent, especially now, we're always holding up some standard to them. You know, I think the most important thing is that you love your kids and you love yourself and who you are. That's what makes you successful.
Then on my next question, Ms. Millay, what do you feel about other forms of gender presentation? You talked about cisgender and transgender, but what about other forms? Have you thought about them?
Non-binary?
Yeah.
So when I speak to, when I'm speaking to schools and businesses and legislators, I always make sure to talk about non-binary children and youth as well, because it's very important and it's very often left out of discussions. And yes, indeed, I left it out today. I was talking about my son, who's transgender. So what this young lady is referring to is transgender is sometimes seen as binary. Binary means one of two things, so male or female. It's a cross from your sex assigned at birth, but transgender people frequently feel and identify entirely as either male or female. There are people who don't want to fit into those categories, who don't belong in those categories, and they're non-binary or gender variant or gender creative or gender fluid. Sometimes they feel more masculine, sometimes more feminine. They can present in any way. So I think there's a beautiful variety to our lives, just as there is to nature. And that the full expression of the human being is the highest possible goal that any of us can reach to exceed to. And I know some incredible non-binary kids who have a really hard time explaining, shouldn't have to explain themselves, to teachers and community, because people say, well, you got to pick a side. You don't actually, right? I mean, we're all so very different from each other. We all are made up of so many components of what we like and what we think and believe and feel inside and who we really are. And I applaud non-binary youth that I've seen who have, you know, toughed it out in situations where people had a hard time understanding who they are. So, thank you.
I'm curious actually, because I feel like this is an issue that not many people are aware of. And as like a young person, I was unaware until recently that there were so many different gender norms, and there's so many different things that we need to be aware of just in our everyday lives. And I recently watched a documentary on Netflix by Katie Couric, and I'm wondering, is that have you seen the documentary? Do you think it's accurate? And if not, is there another place that anybody can go to understand more?
I think the documentary is excellent.
Yeah, it was
Actually,
great.
one of my closest friend's daughters is in it. The family from Washington, D.C., little girl Ellie, she's adorable. They've actually moved to Beverly, so they're here now, which I'm glad about. But anyway, I think it's excellent. It's an excellent place to begin. I think she covers a lot of topics with respect, and Kitty, that is, and she knows when she doesn't know, and she knows when she's flubbed. And the story behind that documentary is that she made a mistake somewhere on the camera, but she left it in and left herself being told to do it the right way because she wanted to demonstrate. You see, you can make mistakes in good faith, and it's okay as long as you are trying. I think that's a great resource. I think Human Rights Campaign has a lot of stuff online that is excellent to understanding this more. And there's more stuff coming out all the time. Yeah.
Point in any of your lives where you stopped believing that you could do it?
Powerful question.
Did everyone hear the question? Was there a point in any of your lives where you stopped believing that you could do it?
Well, I think for all of us, it's not like life is a straight path. I think there's no one who wakes up to being conscious as a human and be like, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to do anything different. They have no doubt. So I feel like so much of life is this meandering path where you kind of have all these possibilities open. You may be swayed a little bit. So for me, I didn't want to be a veterinarian. I actually had no idea what I wanted to be. And then all of a sudden, college, my senior year, people were walking around campus dressed up in suits, and I realized I was supposed to get a job. And I somehow had completely flaked on that part. So for me, when I had decided when I was in my PhD program to become a veterinarian, the faculty advisor told me, you're never going to get in. Every little girl who's ever loved horses wants to be a vet, and you're not special. And I was really kind of horrified. And then when I got in, I wrote him this really lovely thank you note for his support.
So I have a question for Mimi as well. We were all given some information when we came in about the transgender bill or question that's coming out on the ballot in November. And so I just wondered about if you had a perspective on that and what that means for your son and your advocacy.
Thank you so much for asking that question. It took me a while to find out in the audience where you were, but I've caught on you now. For 10 years, for 10 whole years, advocates in Massachusetts and transgender people and the people who care about them have fought to have the word gender identity included in a non-discrimination bill that says that business owners, like theaters and hospitals and public spaces, can't discriminate against people. And that original bill said they can't discriminate against people based on race and sexual orientation, whether they're gay or straight, or ability, for example, different abilities, but it didn't include gender identity. And that was a battle that the transgender community and their allies have fought and won. And the bill was signed in July of 2016, and my family were part of the celebration afterwards because this meant a lot to our family and to every transgender person and non-binary person in the community. The reason being that the opposition to this bill, this public accommodations non-discrimination bill, had spread the idea that transgender people are dangerous because, if they are allowed to use public accommodations without any discrimination, they're going to be using the facilities. And we don't want them in a bathroom we're not comfortable or we don't feel safe. If a transgender woman, for example, whose sex assigned as birth was male, is going to be in the bathroom with my daughter. Knowing so many transgender people, it is so evident that the only people who feel threatened in situations like this are generally the transgender person themselves. because the violence that has been perpetuated against them is horrific. In Massachusetts itself, 73% of transgender and non-binary adults said that they were harassed in a public accommodation. Okay, that's a huge number. And when this bill passed, it was a triumph for civil rights. But there is a group, with the help of the Alliance Defending Freedom, some of you have probably heard of it. It's a, I call it the other family values, that is not love and tolerance, the other family values group, that's been funding a lot of the opposition to bills like this, to freedom bills like this. They collected signatures last year. They stood out in front of all of the, like Stop and Shop or whatever, and got 30,000 signatures, the amount that they needed, so that this law could be repealed based on a referendum in November, which would be devastating and completely unnecessary. There hasn't been one incident since this law was passed that any of them can point to and say this wasn't good for our Commonwealth. It was good for our Commonwealth. The chiefs of police came out and said it was good for the Commonwealth. The domestic violence advocates said this was good for women. And so when you go in November to the ballot and you see, do you want to take away this right? Do you want to take away the non-discrimination towards transgender people in public accommodations? I hope it's a resounding no. I don't want to take it away. Thank you.
So I know that we have so many more questions that we would love to ask our panelists, but we want to be respectful of people's time. So I want to thank the panelists so much for sharing your perspectives and sharing your stories. And as a closing, we would welcome back She Major to say goodnight to all of us.
You want to mention that we're having this?
Make sure your mics are on.
She's here. We good.
We want to say thank you again for having us here, and how about just one more round of applause for all of them, because they were amazing. Yes. You know, we're an all-female a cappella group, and one thing that we didn't realize is that we're actually kind of standing up in our society, and we didn't actually realize what a big deal it was until last year we came to this event. And so I love that we got to come back this year and hopefully many more times in the future. So with that, we'll be singing Sweet Dreams by the Eurythmics. Thank you.
To disagree, I traveled the world and the seven seas. Everybody is looking for something. Some of them want to use you. Some of them want to be used by you. Some of them want to abuse you. Some of them want to be abused. dreams are made of this. Who am I to disagree? I travel the world and the 7 seas. Everybody's looking for something.
Thank you, She Major. Thank you again to our panelists. And I just, before we go, want to remind you to save the date for a forum on the non-discrimination laws on the Massachusetts statewide ballot in November. That is on Tuesday, April 3rd at the Public Safety Building at 7 p.m. So please come with questions, and we're happy to talk with you about it. Thank you all so much for coming. Have a wonderful night.